Hi guys, welcome back to Jim's Reptile Jungle. Now if you've been watching me for a while, you probably know that I keep some of my animals slightly differently to most people. For example, in this video I'm going to be talking to you about how I house some of my turtle species. You might find a lot of people keep their turtles in glass aquariums, and that's perfectly fine, and I have done that in the past, and actually I still do. My Chinese softshell turtle is in a glass aquarium at the moment. However, the majority of my turtles, throughout the time I've kept them, I've kept in different ways that I've sort of taken from some other people and facilities and adapted them to what I need. That's something I want to show you, talk about in some ways, and sort of maybe give you a different perspective on how to keep certain species, because I found the way I've done it has been rather successful for some of the species that I've kept, if that makes sense. So the main highlight for this video is actually going to be on my musk turtle enclosure. This is the enclosure I put them in through winter time, and will most likely become my Chinese softshell turtle once I decide to keep the musk turtles out all year round. However, for now, for the musks, it's working really well for them. So I've got some B-roll that I'm probably going to roll over while I'm talking about everything in this enclosure, and I'm also going to talk about some of the other ways I've kept them in the past. That's somewhat similar, but it's sort of this sort of arc of evolution between where I started with them and where I've ended up now to suit me best. So the musk turtles are in my front shed. They are in a 12-foot by 10-foot shed, fully insulated and heated with an oil electric radiator. They're in the left part of the shed in a 6-foot long by 2-foot enclosure, which the turtle enclosure comes up to around 2 feet, just shy of 2 feet. Now, if you know musk turtles and you've seen their environments in the wild, they're not strong swimmers. They prefer shallower water, things like the Florida Everglades, for example, where they have these nice muddy sloped embankments where they can crawl up and down and sit in the shallow areas where they can just stick their head out and just breathe. So knowing this, I offered them a somewhat shallow water area. Now this area is still a fairly decent size. If you were to look at it from a side perspective, which you can't really for this enclosure because it's wood and everything, they will have to, in order to sit with their nose out the water when the water's fully in there, they'll have to sort of raise themselves up on their back legs, stick their neck out the whole way, and then they'll be able to breathe there, which is good. It allows them to get that muscle growth when they do move around and swim, because they can swim in there, and it also allows them to do that sort of walking, similar to a lot of other turtles do, ground dwelling turtles do, where they just sort of walk across the water rather than swim. I do have a slope in there. This is a sort of a plastic coated metal slope thing. I find it's important when you're offering the turtles a way out to give them a slope rather than a sheer sort of corner, because they struggle to get over that sometimes. A slope means that they can walk out nice and easy, and because it's this sort of holy sort of ladder sort of structure, they can go underneath it with no worry of them not being able to get up and breathe. So the enclosure itself is actually built out of wood. In the past I have built entire enclosures out of wood before, and these are the big wooden beams that you use to build the roofs on houses. So there's very minimal bowing on these. They're quite thick and quite heavy. So they're fairly good quality wood that can hold a lot of pressure. So I basically screw them together in a square, just using some big long decking screws. Now I use a rubber-based liner. I find it works best. You want to avoid these sort of cheaper liners, which is sort of this plasticky stuff. Those sort of go brittle over time, and the turtles tend to be able to get their claws in that a bit easier and cause punctures. Underneath the liner though, I actually insulate it with a form of insulating foam. There's these sort of insulating foam sheets that you can get. I just line the entire frame in this stuff in a big square. This does a couple of different things. First of all, it insulates it a bit better. Not that it needs it in the shed, it's completely insulated anyway, but it causes a bit more insulation, as well as it makes there be a sort of spongy sort of feel to the liner itself. So if you get any heavy things drop on the liner, or the claws going into the liner from the turtles, there's some flex there. There's a bit of give. So instead of it just being a rock hard floor or side, where if something drops on it or the turtles scrape, you've got that easy sort of backing. It sort of flexes and works around them a bit better, and I found that to be an easier way to avoid damage. I have both a land and water section. What a lot of people don't realise with musk turtles is that they are highly terrestrial as well. I've seen musk turtles climb vertically up, tree roots and things when I've kept them outside, and it's kind of worrying which is why I don't normally keep them outside too long, because you need a really secure enclosure. They are very, very good at climbing things, and they also like to bury themselves in things. I believe in Florida and other places where it gets rather cold sometimes during the year, they'll actually dig down under the soil. So offering them a nice deep soil area will allow them to exhibit that natural behavior if they ever so choose to want to. Not to mention, I have female musk turtles, and if you know anything about turtles, especially female turtles, is that they will want to lay eggs periodically through the year, even if there is no male in there. So it's always good to offer them a place for them to lay their eggs to avoid them getting egg bound. Filtration for this is fairly simple. I just hooked this one up to a simple sponge filter. You've got to be careful because some turtles like to try and eat the sponges, so you can use a power head. However, I run a lot of the different things on a big air pump in that shed, so it just made sense to hook that one up to a sponge filter, which does the job. I just do a water change every week and then rinse the sponge filter out then as well, because it can get quite muddy with the turtles in there, because they do produce a lot of waste. I also have plants in there. I have duckweed along the surface of the water, which musk turtles don't really eat. They don't eat plants that often. They're more of a predatory turtle species that eats crustaceans and worms. But in here I use a nice covering of duckweed. I also have these fake sort of lily pads that work for cover as well. And I also have a bit of pothos that I'm trying to grow out there, and then another water plant in there as well, just to sort of take out any of the nutrients in there. And it also gives them a bit of cover, which I like as well. It looks a bit nice. For lighting, I use a mercury vapor bulb, which is hooked up to just a clamp sort of stand thing. The mercury vapors are quite good for turtle use because they offer that UVB lighting, as well as that UVA and all the heat and everything, and it gives that good I don't know how to say it, that good heating, other than it's just always warm. It actually hits the animal quite well, and it eats them up from the inside and everything, similar to your deep heat projectors and things like that. So that works quite well, and I found no issues with the shell growth or anything for these turtles using those sort of lights. So that's my go-to for indoor turtle tank sort of thing. But obviously T5s are always better. I have used T5s in the past, but I have broken a lot of T5 units with water damage, so keep them far away from your water. All in all though, I find this is the easiest way to do this. For me, it's working really well. In the summertime, they go outside, and they're perfectly fine out there in a preformed pond. There's another option if you don't like liners and don't want to risk the problem with a liner. You can get preformed ponds. You can buy preformed ponds that can just sit out, like things like food troughs and water troughs for cattle. But you can get those plastic sort of preformed ponds you get on Amazon and things. They're rather flexible, so you can't really sit those out on their own. But what I found is if you do the same method with the wood, put the preformed pond in and then fill it up with sand or soil, that will hold that structure fairly well, and you shouldn't have any bowing or issues there. So that's another option you can do. It's just a big square preformed pond, which I've done in the past, and I think I'll have a video of, so you're probably watching that now if I've done an overlay somewhere. But yeah, hopefully you found this a bit interesting. I know it's a bit all over the place. I recorded all the B-roll first, and I'm trying to think back to what I recorded, so it might not be the most professional thing, but I just wanted to chuck a bit of information or things I've done in the past out there, so maybe you'll be able to use this as a reference or anything, or any idea what you do. If you've done things in the past, or if you're doing things like that now, be sure to message me on Instagram or tell me in the comment section below. I'm really happy to see people's enclosures. It gives me good ideas for things I can do as well. Okay, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in another video.